So we want to clear the streaming all across the country, all around the world on AM970theanswer.com for Commissioner Bernard Kerik, former commissioner of the NYPD. What he has done in this Eddie Gallagher case is nothing short of monumental. Bernie is a friend. He doesn't forget that we're pals on this show, and yet he makes international news by getting Eddie Gallagher freed. I'm telling you, this is huge.
Don't get carried away.
And
Don't
you
get carried
still
away.
remember to come back to the show. And not only that, you called us, and you're up at like 3:30 in the morning. You got no sleep. You called. I'm telling you, there's no loyalty anymore, Bernie. Thank you for your loyalty, brother.
Right.
I swear to God, am I right or wrong? There's no loyalty anymore. It's not you called.
I would agree. I would agree.
You know what I'm saying? And congratulations on all that you did with Eddie Gallagher. Could you walk us through that, how you ended up there, and why this is? And you said it's one of the most historic. This is one of the historic cases in all of Navy's history, correct?
Look, first of all, I want to make sure that it's clear this was a team effort. Okay, so I met Andrea Gallagher and Sean Gallagher, Eddie's wife and his brother, back in November of last year. Befriended them, came friends with them, got
Where'd
to
you
know
meet them, Bernie, if I may ask?
Somebody introduced me to them through social media because of the case.
Yeah.
I took an interest in the case. I wrote about it. And I was concerned. On September 14, 2001, President Bush came to Ground Zero and he said, we're going to find and catch the people that did this to the city and America. And then we sent all these people over to the Middle East and around the world to go after the terrorists, right? Eddie Gallagher was one of those people. And when I see things like this, it bothers me. So I got involved. I met the family. And at some point, about 4 months after we were friends, I told Andrea Gallagher, I said, look, I hate to tell you this. I think your lawyers are horrible. I don't think they're doing the right thing. And I think you need a new legal team. I'd like you to talk to a personal friend, Tim Parlatore, who's a phenomenal lawyer. He's one of my lawyers. He's a great guy. I said, talk to him and just get some advice from him. And within 2 hours, she called me back and she said, look, how do I get that guy on my team? How do I get him involved? I spoke to Tim. We brought Tim into it. And then over the next month, we wound up getting Mark Mukasey, who is, a major lawyer in New York City, in the country, got him involved, and that was sort of the dream team. But here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people realize. Mark Mukasey and Tim Parlatore, with other lawyers from Tim's team and a couple JAG attorneys, in 4 months, took over this case, a premeditated murder case, war crimes case, shooting innocent civilians and all that nonsense, and in 4 months went to trial against the U.S. Navy, and he was acquitted on every single war crimes charge.
That is huge. Now, are there going to be repercussions to the incidents of prosecutorial misconduct? Because what went on in the case, it seemed like there was misconduct that you saw from the get-go, yes?
Well, that's some of the things that concerned me early on. It was something that concerned Tim and Mark. We saw a number of violations of, where they were suppressing Brady material, suppressing exculpatory evidence. And then at some point in time, they actually put a tracking beacon on the defense team's emails. In other words, they were monitoring our emails without a warrant, which is a federal crime. And the Navy prosecutor that did this, he actually told the judge, the Navy judge, he was doing it with the U.S. Attorney in San Diego. And he told the U.S. Attorney in San Diego that, he was working with the Navy judge. Lied on both ends and got caught. Tim Parlatore found the beacon on the emails, and we brought light to it. And from that point on, the Navy judge, whacked the prosecutor, threw him off the case, and he also let Eddie Gallagher out of pretrial confinement and sent him home.
That was huge. Bernie, you were in the courtroom when Corey Scott, was that his name? Corey?
Yeah, the medic.
He went in and he said he put his hand. Could you walk us through exactly what happened and what was the feeling in the courtroom when you heard that?
Eddie was charged with stabbing to death and killing an ISIS terrorist, right? So we had interviewed Corey Scott about 3 weeks before the trial, and during that interview, We asked him what happened, where he was, what he was doing, what he saw. And at some point in time, he says to us in this room that we're in, the terrorist asphyxiated and stopped breathing and died, and had nothing to do with Eddie Gallagher. So Mark Mukasey said, asphyxiated, you mean he stopped breathing, right? Yes. How did he stop breathing? And before he got to answer, his attorney was with him, and he stopped him, and he said, listen, we are working on some immunity deals and immunity issues, and we can't get into it. Wow. So at trial, under direct examination, now this is the prosecutor's witness. The prosecutor asked him, asphyxiation. So he asphyxiated? Yes. They were so focused on Eddie Gallagher, they didn't ask the next question. They didn't ask how. What they say? And what was Eddie Gallagher doing? Where was the chief? Forget the chief for a minute. Ask the question.
Yeah.
So on cross-examination, Tim Parlatore got on and said, you mentioned asphyxiation. You mean he stopped breathing, right? Yes. How did he stop breathing? And this medic basically talking in the same manner in which we're talking, maybe like he's ordering coffee from Starbucks. He says, I took my hand, I placed it over the air tube on the crike on his neck. I stopped the airflow until he died.
Whoa.
And everybody in the courtroom's like looking at each other thinking, what did he just say?
Yeah, man.
And Tim said, so you killed him? He said, yeah. Why? Why did you kill him? He said he was going to die anyway. He was going to die anyway. He had blast lung. He had been shot. He had massive blood loss. And he basically said, if they sustained him, if they stabilized him, the Iraqis would have tortured him and killed him anyway.
Yeah. Gosh almighty, and you were in the courtroom. I mean, what was the reaction of the judge, just out of curiosity?
I got to tell you, the Navy judge, Captain Aaron Rue, I think he was one of the best judges that I've seen in a while. He was super fair.
Yeah.
He wasn't pro-prosecutor like many judges are these days.
Yeah.
Very fair, very smooth, cool.
You know what's amazing, man? I got to tell you, and then I want to, first of all, Eddie Gallagher's legal problems are over.
Yeah, well, right now he's going through a phase where the sentencing kicks in, and his attorneys have to work that out with the command. But I think the command, hopefully, they're going to deal with this in a fair way. He'll take his punishment, put in his retirement, and move on. He was found guilty of taking a photo with the ISIS terrorist. But to me, listen, there was a lieutenant, one of his superiors in the photo. There were 6 other guys in the photo, whatever. Don't kill this guy's career for that photo, because I promise you there's thousands of them out there of other guys that have taken these kind of photos.
Yeah. What's it feel like, though, if you don't step up for Eddie Gallagher? He's in jail for life.
You know something, Joe? We were leaving, Tim and I and Mark were leaving on July 4th. We were saying our goodbyes to Eddie, and he came up to us outside, and he said, I got to talk to you guys 1 second. He was extremely emotional. He said, you saved my life. If it were not for you, this would have not gone the way it did, and I want to thank you. And that's a hell of a thing to have somebody say to you.
Commissioner, I know you, and we're friends, and isn't it interesting how life happens? What you went through in your life, whatever, witch hunt or anything, it's like it set you up for helping the president pass this first step law, helping reform criminal justice. You were right there front and center with President Trump. I saw it right there. He shook your hand first before anybody else, after all you went through, and now you saved a life in Eddie Gallagher.
You know what it is, Joe? When you go through something like I have, you know what can happen if you don't have the right legal team. You know what can happen if you don't have the funds. People think, you have constitutional rights. Well, I have to tell you, a felony conviction, when you're fighting that, you're fighting for your life, literally. And you don't have the constitutional rights you think you have if you don't have the money to pay for them. If you don't have the money to pay for a strong legal defense. In Eddie's case, I have to admit, the Navy SEALs Fund was phenomenal in helping him and his family take care of the legal defense funds.
Yeah.
And, without them, without the support of the American people, and there was overwhelming support from the American people and from the Navy SEAL community. I met so many hardcore, the real brotherhood of the SEAL community in Coronado, in San Diego, people that come out for Eddie. They are the people, and I'm in awe of these guys, because when New York City needed somebody to come to our defense, these were the men that went out there and did it.
Yeah, man.
Our special operations community, special forces, Navy SEALs, Delta, U.S. Rangers. These are the kind of people that go out there and fight that fight. And we have to support them when they're wronged.
So what happens when you get somebody like the Southern District in New York, and the way the witch hunt that they're going after President Trump, and Andrew Cuomo, who I know Andrew 100 years. Who is this guy? Tish James. We love Tish James. What's going on? They're using the Southern District of New York as like a hit squad against the president, now going after his tax returns. I can't trust, and I would dying to hear your take on all of this, Bernie, after all you went through and your legal situation. I'm not trusting anybody. The deep state, the DOJ, the Mueller probe, it dilutes the real law and order of the country, does it not?
Yes, it does, Joe. And it seems like it's only getting worse. Selective and political prosecutions, it basically seems like they're growing. And now, because of the polarization in politics, it's happening more than ever.
Yeah.
And the political leaders around the country, they are using the Justice Department as a political tool. When you talk to Dershowitz later, ask him, because there's nobody that can talk about this better than he can.
Right. It's so true. Hope Hicks? Hope Hicks they're going to bring in? Hope Hicks?
It's nonsense. Listen, this is just harassment and torture. Keep in mind, if Hope Hicks, they bring her in, she has to pay for those attorneys.
Yes, thank you.
They bankrupt every one of the staff members, the family members, the friends. They bankrupt them with legal fees. The Department of Justice doesn't cost them a dime.
It's so true. Commissioner Bernard Kerik, fascinating story. Before we let you go, Bernie, if we may, I want to ask you some law enforcement questions. ANTIFA, how do we deal with this? This is a terrorist group, and the press isn't even addressing this issue.
Well, I think a couple things. One, I think it should be designated, labeled as a domestic terror group, number one. Number two, I think there has to be an internal investigation or some kind of investigation that identifies where their money comes from, Joe. Somebody's funding them.
Yeah.
Somebody's funding them. What is terrorism? Terrorism is the threats, intimidation, and violence for political reasons. That's what this group is all about. Somebody's funding it. I think we have to look at who is funding it. I think it's going to come back to a George Soros or other people like him. And I think they should be held accountable for the violence, the threats, and the intimidation that these guys impose on political adversaries.
Yeah, and before we let you go, Commissioner, this Megan Rapinoe of the U.S. women's soccer team. I'm rooting for the team. It's great. The girls won. It's spectacular. Why does it become political like this, Bernie?
It sickens me. And I, you know what? I don't blame those girls, honestly. I blame the coaches, and I blame the committee, and I blame people like that. If you're not a supporter of this country, and you don't support the president of this country, you can't be on that team. I don't give a damn how good you are.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be allowed to represent the country that you hate. You shouldn't be allowed to represent the country that, you despise. That you're going to stand up there and do all this political nonsense. That's not what it's about.
The country that gave you so much.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I don't get it.
Commissioner Bernard Kerik, a great chat with respect and certainly affection. But Bernie, what you went through with the Eddie Gallagher situation is monumental. It's epic. And again, you always ask, why does this happen to me? What you went through, and helping the first step, helping criminal justice reform. Eddie Gallagher. There's a reason for everything, brother.
It was a great team of lawyers, man. Great team of lawyers.
Made it happen.
The best of the best.
You're very humble. You made it happen. Commissioner, thank you, my friend. God bless, and all the very best. Thanks for coming in, Bernie.
Thank you.